We've all heard that to start the day off right, we need a good breakfast, and that's true. But according to so many commercials, a good nutritious breakfast consists of a bowl of cereal with milk and a glass of juice. But is this really true? That's the question for today's Debunking the Myth. What about that breakfast, Joe?
Well, surely the myth is that a bowl of cereal, a glass of milk, and a glass of fruit juice is the way to start the day. If you live in the northeastern part of the United States or the midwestern part of the United States, that's probably the worst possible breakfast choice that an individual can make.
There's no protein, right?
Most of those people are going to be protein types. We'll touch more on that in a moment. But many of the cereals, Shirley, if you look on the side of the box, this is one thing I would beg every grandmother and mother and male who might be shopping, is when you see high fructose corn syrup on anything, avoid it.
Don't get it. Yeah.
They have proven now that high fructose corn syrup has a 30% greater effect of insulin produced from your pancreas to match the glucose in your bloodstream, which means that it greatly spikes the glucose in your bloodstream more than a basic, simple, natural sugar. So high fructose corn syrup, a lot of these cereals have colorings, they have artificial flavors.
Marshmallows,
yes,
stuff like that.
But they're basically just sugar balls. And as we've touched many times on this program, Shirley, most of the milk that people drink in this country is very carcinogenic. Organic milk is a step up. Many states, in fact, I just had a long conversation with Mike Singletary, remember, from the Chicago Bears, and Mike calls us for nutritional advice, and we're kind of friends, and we were talking on the air. We were talking on the phone, and I got him to try raw cow's milk. So he now has found a farmer in California where it's legal, and he's like, Joe, I love it, taking it every day. He takes it with our Total Living drink, mixes it with raw cow's milk. But for most people, and we'll get into the types in just a minute, but for most people, like in the areas that we just discussed, if you're a protein type, one of the best things you could have for breakfast are some healthy eggs and maybe some lean turkey sausage and water. Remember, our tip with Kylie has always been first thing of the day, 12 ounces of water before you put anything.
And not even toast with that. I mean,
if you do have toast, you could have a piece of Ezekiel bread, lightly buttered.
By the way, I've developed a taste for it.
See, I told you.
I've developed a taste for it.
You just
I
gotta
love
believe.
it. I know. I didn't like it, but Donnie, our producer, brought in a different flavor because they have several different varieties of it. He brought in a different variety in the orange package, and I really love it.
That's the one I like, the orange package.
I like the orange package. Anyway, so that would be a nice, healthy breakfast for most people, especially the meat types, or what do you call them, the lions types, as opposed to the giraffe. And so how can you tell what you are? How do you know if you're a giraffe or a lion?
Well, there's a few different things. One, if you were to go on Kylea's website, which is kylea.com, we talk about metabolic type, and we also provide a link to the metabolic typing people. Okay. I won't tell the whole metabolic typing story today, but there are some other things that you can do as far as if you didn't even take a test, and this isn't a clinical test, this is just a written test, multiple choice test.
And I think they do a little saliva test if you can.
Yeah, you can do it.
But basically it's answers to questions.
It is. And some of the things you can tell just beside that, though, is how does eating certain things make you feel? Anytime you eat something that makes you crave more of it shortly after you eat it is a bad sign. Really? So if you sit there and you eat a bowl of pasta, and the first thing you want after the pasta is another starch or sugar, what that's telling you is that's oxidizing way too quickly in your bloodstream, and your brain is saying, I didn't get enough, give me some more. If a food makes you tired, for instance, now I have an Italian background, so I love pasta, but what I've managed to do is keep pasta to once, maybe twice a month. I cut the portions in half. I can't give it up completely. Simple, balanced health, not extremes. But before Shirley, if I would have too much pasta, and my family has seen me do this several times, I would literally get up from the kitchen table, go lay in a chair, and be sleeping in 5 minutes. Wow. And my nutrition counselor at the time explained it to me. I was basically drunk. That increased my blood sugar so high, I was almost kind of drunk. And a diabetic could explain to you much more what that feeling's like, you know. If a person, if they do well with, say, they get up in the morning and they have a little bit of yogurt and they have some berries, and that makes them feel good, and they have plenty of energy, and they're fine to lunch, okay? That person is probably a mixed type and maybe even a carbohydrate type, okay? Then maybe that person for lunch is happy with a half a sandwich and a vegetable, okay? They're usually lighter eaters. The mixed types,
a salad.
Or even a salad. The mixed types and the carbohydrate types are usually lighter eaters in general, more portion control people. I'm making protein eaters sound like big,
I'm a mixed type, by the way.
You're a mixed type?
Yep.
And versus just the opposite. For a protein type, if you have something like, say, eggs and turkey sausage for breakfast, and you're content after that, and you're not hungry till 11 or 12 o'clock, which you're going to get hungry at that time.
Sure.
But if it makes you feel good, you're not doing this with your energy highs and lows, that's a good sign of what you're supposed to be eating. Another thing is your ancestry, as far as how can you tell. If your ancestry is Mediterranean, you are most likely going to be a protein type or a mixed type. If your ancestry is somewhere where it's very close to the equator, you know, if it's South American or the Incas or whatever, okay? Anything real close to the equator, it means a lot of sunshine. So what's going to happen with them is they're going to tolerate carbohydrates very well. So they live on rice and beans and vegetables. So your ancestry is going to have a lot to do with it. And then your geographical position.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me, that where you live, even in this country, can make a difference.
No question. So if your ancestry is primarily, say, Mediterranean, but now the last 2 generations of your family, like from mine, for instance, that's just an example, we were Mediterranean from Italy. My grandfather came here, though, in the late 1800s, and now we've been here ever since. So now our bodies are pretty much have drawn to and adapted to the soil around here.
Well, and you had to survive the winters.
To the water, and had to survive the winters. And so now we're really more of that typical Midwest type, which is going to be predominantly more protein and fat. So if you live somewhere where there's more sunlight versus less sunlight, the extreme example would be Alaska. You know, as they have their time of year where they have almost no sunlight, you know, for a month at a time, and in that 5-month window, very little sun. They live predominantly on almost fat, pure fat.
Wow.
It oxidizes very slowly in their bloodstream. It keeps their energy level, and it keeps their from getting no depression. It helps them keep their emotional status where it should be. Now that we've westernized, if you will, Alaska to some degree, Eskimos are now struggling with those kinds of things more than ever. So those are some great indicators of what kind of metabolic type you might be.
Well, let me just ask you a question about the protein. You know, there's such a wide variety of protein, which I might say is one of the problems with the food pyramid. It doesn't really always distinguish the types of protein. There's eggs, there's beans, there's meat, and some vegetables have protein. So what's the best kinds of protein?
If you're a protein type, animal proteins are going to be the best. You need your dark green leafy vegetables for all the phytochemicals and the fiber and all antioxidants and all the things that contains. But your protein source is primarily meat. Now, most doctors tell people to eat lean proteins. That isn't really so much what you need to do. What you need to do is eat clean animals. So if you're eating free-range chicken, if you're eating bison that were free on the range and so on and so forth, grass-fed beef from cows, that's the key, is if you're eating clean animals, that protein is going to work very well in your body. It isn't so much how much fat that animal had, because that animal is supposed to have just as much fat as God designed it to have. When we alter their culture and their living conditions, then we alter the composition of their meat, you know, their flesh, which is altered, you know, you could alter the composition.
In other words, we give them hormones to make them grow faster because it makes more money, right?
So now we eat them. I mean, look how much bigger of a society we are physically. It's because of all the growth hormones that are in our soil and our water and the food our animals eat. So metabolic typing is something we could spend 3 or 4 shows on.
Yeah, we'll have to have a show on, really, because it's very fascinating.
It is.
Well, what about milk products? You don't think milk products is really a good way to get your protein, right, even though it does have protein? No,
because milk, I'm a believer in raw milk. If you can't get raw milk, then you go to organic milk. But milk, by and large, because it's mixed with other things, is not a high percentage of protein per se.
Okay.
I mean, a 12-ounce glass of milk, which is a lot of ounces, I mean,
a lot, yeah.
is, I think, about 10 or 12 grams of protein. Whereas if, you know, an 8-ounce piece of chicken is twice that much, and you don't have any of the issues that you have with milk. A lot of people, lactose intolerance we're familiar with, but a lot of people are milk sensitive. It affects their mucus, and people who sneeze more than they should or have congestion in their ears, a lot of that can be eliminated from drinking milk.
Quickly, before we go to a break, we saw the little guy running up the steps. How important is exercise when we're talking about building a healthy diet? How important is it compared to what we eat?
Besides the other things we know about exercise, what it does for you cardiovascular, how good it is for your brain, how good it makes you feel. From a weight management standpoint, if you take a car that's just not been driven, okay, and it's not been driven for months, and you start it up and you have to pump the gas and you finally get the thing started, you know how it runs rough and it sputters, okay? Your body's the same way. When you exercise, you put your metabolism in a higher state. Your metabolism is then, your body is more able to then utilize that calorie for energy. So it's a self-perpetuating thing. Exercise, even moderate, is huge.
It is.
In your weight control.
Can totally save your life. That's another good topic for a show too.